Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Buckets After Bedtime, the Indiana Hoosiers basketball podcast for busy parents. I'm your host Dylan, and once the house is quiet and the kids are finally asleep, it's time to talk some Indiana Hoosiers basketball. So as you're cleaning the playroom for the 100th time today, grab those headphones and let's talk some IU hoops. Of course, today's episode is going to be a little different. Special episode, the March Madness edition. So over the next few episodes, I'll be going over my preview of the NCAA bracket. I'll give you my picks for every game, how I see things are going to happen. Of course, by the end of day one, probably, I'll have to rip it up, but that's the fun of this time of year. One of the best tournaments in all sports. Really nothing better than watching basketball all game and just watching madness unfold. Unfortunately, from an Indiana basketball fan standpoint, I would love to be talking about breaking down their opening round matchup, but again, for the third year in a row now, Indiana is not included in the bracket. So, although we are a dedicated Indiana basketball podcast, the next few episodes we're be talking about everything but them. So this very first episode of this series, we're going to talk about the East region, so the top left bracket. And so we'll go by region, and each episode will be dedicated to each specific region, and then at the very last region preview, which would be the Midwest, I'll talk about my final four picks and eventual who I think is going to cut down the next nets on April 6th in Indianapolis. So let's go right into it. The East region preview. I'm going to take a little page out of John Rothstein's book and kind of name each region. And we'll have a little fun with it. Since this is a podcast intended for busy parents. Each region's name is going to be parenting themed. So, without further ado, the East region, or as I like to call it, the bedtime region. Why am I calling it the bedtime region, you ask? If you look, 5 of the top 12 defenses in this tournament are in this region. You're looking at Duke, UConn, Michigan State, Kansas, St. John, even Northern Iowa, the 12 seed, all ranked top 25 in defensive efficiency. And as a parent, you know how hard and frustrating it is to go through the bedtime routine, similar to how hard and frustrating it can be as an offense to go up against a really good defense. It could be frustrating. It could be difficult. Rarely does it go smoothly. Offensively, you have to be on top of your A game. And even then, a really good defense can neutralize you. I feel the same way when me and my wife are trying to put our 4-year-old and soon to be 2-year-old to bed. And of course, the old additive, defense travels. And if you're a parent on the road for vacation, you know how bad bedtime routine is. It's absolute nightmare fuel. So that's why I deemed this region the bedtime region, because it is just littered with some solid defenses and could, if things break that way, give us some really tough physical, just grinded out games. So if you like defense, this is going to be the region for you. So let's go game by game here. Duke Siena 116, no conversation there. We're going Duke. 8-9 matchup, Ohio State TCU. This is going to be the first game of the tournament, actually, on Thursday. Not counting the first 4, but the first game on Thursday. 8-9 matchups, usually coin flips. Ohio State. Bruce Thornton, legacy game. His first NCAA tournament game in his career. He's had a hell of a career as a Buckeye for all 4 years, leading scorer in team history. Yet this will be his first NCAA tournament game. As I look at TCU, nothing really jumped off the page right away. I know they had a rough start to their season, losing to New Orleans. But in that same breath, they only lost to Michigan by 4. They beat Florida and Wisconsin earlier in the year and beat Texas Tech recently within the past few weeks and made it through a pretty tough Big 12 conference where one could argue is probably the toughest, best, deepest conference this year. With all that being said, though, I'm going to ride with the Big Ten team, mainly because of Bruce Thornton. He's going to be the best player on the court, and he's a guard, and guards win in March. So give me Ohio State basketball. They'll be able to win a postseason game, unlike their football team. Next we get the 5-12, St. John's versus Northern Iowa. St. John's coming off a Big East regular season title and conference tournament win. Northern Iowa, people will probably just think about previous Northern Iowa teams and their successes in knocking off Goliath. You think of Northern Iowa, you think about them being a number 1 Kansas team. You think about that half-court shot. I think it was against Texas. But this Northern Iowa team's that good. They were 6th in the Missouri Valley and ended up going on a run to win their conference tournament. So give me St. John's in that one. And 4-13, we got Kansas Cal Baptist. Kansas really inconsistent. Darren Peterson, obviously, is going to be a top lottery pick, could go number 1. He's been playing more often here lately, which if you completely new to college, haven't watched any college basketball this year, or haven't really paid attention to anything besides maybe Indiana and the Big Ten, big thing with Kansas this year is Peterson's availability, missing a lot of games, taking himself out at certain times during games, but recently he's been playing more. He's a type of guard who could obviously go on like a Kemba Walker type of run. He's that talented. This Kansas team as a whole hasn't showed as much consistency. So, but they're going to take care of Cal Baptist, no problem there. So give me Kansas to move on to play St. John. Next game, talking Louisville and South Florida. South Florida, I'll be American. Plays a very fast pace, guards who can shoot, great offensive rebounding. Louisville, kind of a disappointment this year, or highly ranked coming in the year. Pat Kelsey's second year at the helm. They also love to shoot a lot of threes, so if you like fast-paced perimeter shooting, this game is for you. Big question mark with Louisville is the health of Mikael Brown, their talented freshman who's also going to be a lottery pick. Not probably, he will be. He did play at all the ACC tournament, so his availability be a question mark. The big thing when you're looking at, mid-majors taking on high major programs is a lot of times the athleticism deficit that just can't be overcome by the mid-majors. One thing I've been hearing about and listening about the South Florida team is they have athletes. I caught a little bit of their conference championship game on Sunday against Wichita State, and you could see they have high major type athletes. So I'm not too concerned about that perspective. Obviously, this game is really a matter of if these teams get red hot from beyond the arc, it's going to be a problem for the other team. So give me the upset. Give me South Florida here. Louisville's just been too inconsistent down year, not living up to expectations. So Pat Kelsey will have to wait another year before he gets his first tournament win at Louisville. 3-14, Michigan State, North Dakota State. Michigan State coming off a disappointing opening tournament, Big Ten Conference tournament loss to UCLA. I think I have a little bit of a wake-up call, maybe. They will have no problem with North Dakota State. Speaking of UCLA, they're in the 7-10 matchup against UCF, University of Central Florida, out of the Big 12. Big thing with UCLA is injury concerns with Donovan Dent and Thibodeau. And, getting hurt in the Big Ten tournament. So big question mark there. My assumptions they'll probably play, but you never know. But the big thing that's kind of turned me off from UCLA right now is where this game is being played. It's being played in Philadelphia, and Mick Cronin is notorious for hating going to the East Coast. If you look back at this past year, their only win out inside the Eastern time zone was at Penn State. Penn State was god awful. So I'm gonna take UCF in an upset there. And then the 2-15 matchup, we have UConn versus Furman. Yeah, UConn's winning that one. They're moving on. All right, so now we're on to the second round, or the round of 32. Round of 32. Did I consider the second round? Yeah, let's consider the second round. This whole first four thing gets me messed up, but round of 32. 1 seed Duke versus 8 seed Ohio State. I hate both these teams. Let's just be honest. Both these teams, Duke basketball and Ohio State football, kind of the same fans. Arrogant, think the sport revolves around them. But in this case, I know Duke's dealing with some injury concerns as well. I don't know if they'll have Foster back or the big man back by this time, but even if they don't, I think the Boozer twins are too much for Ohio State, and they move on to the Sweet 16. We have a 4-5 Kansas St. John's matchup. This one's gonna be a pretty good one. You got Patino versus Self. Great coaches in this region overall. I think St. John's though is gonna be too physical. Their defensively, they'll be able to shut down Kansas. And Kansas, like I said, this hasn't been consistent. And this could be a game where St. John almost bullies Peterson into just kind of tapping out and saying, okay, I had my run at Kansas. You forced me to play college basketball, but now it's time for me to go to the NBA. So give me Rick Pitino and St. John. Next matchup, Michigan State versus University of South Florida. I think the run for South Florida stops here. Michigan State, I think, just too good and too much size for the South Florida team. You could sell me on a scenario where South Florida gets hot and Michigan State is not a great three-point shooting team, but I think just the size and the solid point guard play of Jeremy Fears gets Michigan State on to the Sweet 16. And then finally, the last matchup in this region, the round 32, you have UConn versus University of Central Florida. Give me UConn. Too much to deal with UCF in terms of talent. Again, kind of the similar mold as Michigan State physically, a physical presence, good rebounding. Rarely do they beat themselves. So give me Dan Hurley and UConn, which sets up a Sweet 16 in the East Regional that includes Duke versus St. John's, Michigan State versus UConn. I mean, you got two Hall of Fame coaches in Patino and Izzo. Hurley's gonna make the Hall of Fame, and John Shire is off to a great start at Duke. This Duke St. John's game is interesting. Again, a lot's gonna be dependent on if Duke gets fully healthy in time. Even if they do, though, you also wonder what's their game condition going to be like, when the injured players come back. And I just see a situation where St. John's just kind of has men, and Duke has some relying a little bit more on some freshman talent, similar to what we saw in the Final Four last year, where Duke may have been the more talented team with Cooper Flag and company, but Houston was just a team of men and kind of bullied Duke. I see a similar situation with St. John, where there's their physicality just gets to this younger Duke team, and you get an upset there. So I'm picking St. John's to beat Duke to move on to the Elite Eight. And then Michigan State, UConn. I mean, these are two teams who are nearly identicals in their style. Rely on rebounding, good defense, like to get out in transition if they can, have good size. Not the best three-point shooting teams. So with so much similarities, I'm gonna lean Big Ten. I'm gonna lean Michigan State just because I like Jeremy Fears Jr. more than Solo Ball in terms of the guard matchup. As long as Jeremy Fears isn't kicking people in the balls against, getting himself unnecessary technicals. So give me Izzo, Maybe Izzo to beat Hurley in a great coaching matchup there. The setup by a St. John's versus Michigan State, Elite Eight, chance to go to the Final Four. I'm probably gonna regret this. I just don't like the fact that this team doesn't shoot the three very well. But neither does St. John's. I'm gonna go Michigan State. Again, this is another matchup of two very similar teams with very similar styles, and I just think that this Michigan State team will get cooking, and we'll see a masterclass and from Izzo this March. And I've got Michigan State making it to Indianapolis in the Final Four. Saying that out loud and looking at it in my bracket, I am sick to my stomach, but that's the way it's gonna be. So yeah, I got Sparty in the Final Four coming out of the East region. So again, thank you for listening to this special March Madness preview episode of the East region of Buckets After Bedtime. Again, be on the lookout. We'll be doing all the regions, including Final Four picks too, when I talk about the Midwest region. But I thought it'd be better just kind of do 4 separate episodes versus trying to fit everything into one episode. So people can kind of pick and choose what they want to listen to. Hopefully you listen to all 4. But you gotta do what you gotta do. So that'll do it for tonight's episode of Buckets After Bedtime. If you found this enjoyable, please share it with your friends and family. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. We're available on almost all podcast streaming platforms, including Spotify and Amazon Music. I'm still working. Hopefully this episode's on Apple Podcasts. I'm in the process of getting that figured out. Been having some technical issues with that. We also have the YouTube page, Buckets After Bedtime. So you can also check us out there. But until next time, hug your kids, get some sleep, and as always, go Hoosiers.